In the House, Mike McCormick, President, Mississippi Farm Bureau Federation. Always a busy time of the year when the legislators in town. And everybody needs to take a vacation for at least the week after the session is over and just relax. Good morning, Mike. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Paul. How are you?
Doing good. Let's first of all, let's take the eminent domain, get that out of the way, because that's been something that popped up, and explain it for us a little bit to the point of why there is a concern on that one between the House and Senate, and then give us the status of where you think it is now.
Well, I'll go back a long time ago to 2011 when Farm Bureau led the initiative process to get private property protection actually passed into the Constitution. I was a very big part of that as a volunteer going around the state collecting signatures. It wasn't easy. We got them, and then in the election that year, actually 73% of the people that voted in that election voted for our eminent domain protection that's in the Constitution right now. Actually, more people that voted for it than voted for governor that year. So it's something that Mississippians are very passionate about, and we felt like we put that to rest back in 2011. But as you know, the initiative process has come under attack through the medical marijuana legislation that was passed and the Supreme Court ruling all of that. So we felt like that it was important for us to go back in this year and put into code what's in the Constitution, just to give us a little more protection, to give it a belt and suspender approach. And we started working on that last year. You and I talked about it. We felt like we wouldn't have any problems with it. We had a lot of supporters down at the Capitol that believe in this issue, and we put it in the House and the Senate and bills, and it passed out of the House and got on the floor. And before debate, we ran into a little bit of a roadblock up on the Senate side. We had senators that questioned some part of it and wanted to add some language in there. And after we explained it to them, and we've worked with some constitutional attorneys to explain why it's important that the Constitution is mirrored into state law, word for word, comma for comma, with no changes. While that's extremely important to do that, I think we have eventually worked through the process of coming to an agreement to where I think we can get something done in state code that mirrors word for word what's in the Constitution, Paul.
So what I'm hearing is that the Senate's agreed to pull back as far as changing it or adding some things to it to make it easier or less complicated.
Well, we just don't need words changed in it. That's what the constitutional attorneys tell us, and we've worked through those issues over on the Senate side, and actually passed a suspension of the rules that would allow us to take that vote up. That was sent over to the House side, and we're working with the House and very hopeful. The House leadership has always been extremely supportive of the issue. Now we've got to work through the process of getting a vote on this. I was told early on in my Farm Bureau career, when I came here as president 8 years ago, that nothing in the legislature is ever dead until it's dead. And this one came back to life through a lot of work from some senators and House leadership, and we appreciate each and every one of them for their help.
That's where experience from people like you come in, because it's trying to identify dead. You know, in the real world, you can poke the bear, and if it doesn't move, or the deer or whatever when you're hunting, but you have to poke this sucker about 15 times, and you're still not sure if it's dead. I do want to ask you this, though. How does the Vicksburg and the port acquisition or activation of eminent domain play into this, or did it have anything to do with this?
Well, it certainly leads to question about if there's going to be a challenge on one side or the other of that issue, and do we need to go ahead and get this into state law so we'll have that belt and suspender approach if that comes to pass. I can't answer a lot of questions about the port. I saw it in the news on Saturday when all of that broke, but we've been well aware and well aware of the issues for quite some time now, that we need to get a state code that mirrored the Constitution, and we've been working through that process for quite a while, and
Yeah.
And we're very hopeful today that we'll see something pretty soon come out.
One final question on this. Where's the deadline on this one? Is it a deadline that they've got to do something? And if they don't pass it, what happens?
Well, the deadline was quite some time ago, unless we suspend the rules and take it up. And I guess we can take it up all the way to sine die, which hopefully will be this time next week, Paul. There's a lot of people that want to take a vacation after this for sure. But I think hopefully we'll see something this week on whether we'll be able to move forward. If we're not able to move forward, we have already started working on that process, and we've hired additional help, and I started working on the process of working on this next year. The last year was very quiet. That next year won't be very quiet. If we don't get this done, we'll have to educate the people in the state of Mississippi to let them know why this is extremely important for them. But I'm hopeful we won't have to do that. I think we got a bridge built to get to where we want to be for this.
Well,
session.
the other safety valve is maybe the governor would include this in a special session. But when you start looking at everything that's on the table now, some major things as far as the personal income tax, the wildlife stewardship fund, and a couple of other things, it just looks like it's going to be hard to avoid a special session if these things are not taken care of before sine die.
Well, our goal is to not get caught up in that, and I think we're gonna get to the finish line and get ours finished. But some of those other things are pretty heavy topics, and that'll be for those down in leadership down at the Capitol to figure that out.
Let's talk about the situation, and it affects everybody, and it certainly affects the farmers. I had Don Barrett on the other day. We were talking about an update for what's going on as far as the grain situation and that catastrophe crisis up in the Delta area. Now they have more things, and you talk about perfect storm. When it rains, it pours. It is on our farmers up in the Delta area. But this fertilizer thing is critical to them, and a lot of people have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, let me first say that my heart breaks for those farmers. I've been in situations like they're in up in the Mississippi Delta, and there's I talked to one young farmer that said he left the field in the fall every day combining and stopped on the side of the road and cried before he got to his house because he didn't want his wife to see how worried he is. And I'm sure there's a lot of that going on. We're still unsure if we're going to be able to get any of those farmers any help. So all of those that are trapped in that grain elevator issue up in the Delta, Farm Bureau is working diligently to see what we can do. We certainly can't be involved in the lawsuit, but we're working on other issues to try to help at least not let this happen again in the future.
Yeah.
The fertilizer issue is pretty critical. We get not a lot of fertilizer from Russia, but they certainly are big players in the world market, and we've taught the world the scientific benefits of using fertilizer here from the United States, and so there's a lot of world use of fertilizer. And when
what do we get from them? Because they're number 3 in the world as far as a supplier, and the question is twofold. Number one, is it because of politics and trade and everything else, or is it because they are the only ones that have this? And why couldn't we do it on our own? I have no. What type of fertilizer are we talking about?
They're big producers of potassium and nitrogen, and at times when our market has gone up, we have imported some Russian fertilizer. I've used some on my farm. It's not as high quality as what we get here in the United States. That it just doesn't perform as well as what we do here. So we can produce a lot of our nitrogen here in the United States. We can get a lot of our phosphate here. But potassium is a big need for our Mississippi farmers, and we'll have to get that elsewhere. And you're talking about perfect storms. There's a railroad strike coming out of Canada that's probably going to impact us as much as anything.
We'll talk more about that coming up in a moment or two. But do we need anything else? And it's also, I wanted to ask you about this with the situation in what is the breadbasket for that region, which is Ukraine. Are we going to do like a Brett Favre on the line, call an option, and people changing from maybe cotton or corn to wheat or oats? I'm not sure, but I'll get the expertise from Mike McCormick, President, Mississippi Farm Bureau, when we return in just a moment. Speaking of the House and Senate, they both gavel in at 10 o'clock this morning. More coming up next. All right, let me get back to the visit with Mike McCormick. Is there going to be kind of a change, or is it too late? How do they do this as far as putting in contracts and all of that? As far as what crops they're going to grow and maybe some changes because of what goes on there?
Well, it's the farmers probably already made their decisions on what we're going to plant this year. It's getting right up to planting season. A lot of our corn would be in the ground right now if the weather would cooperate. I was with some farmers yesterday, and they said God's just not ready for us to put the corn in the ground yet. So we'll get there when it dries up just a little bit. But the wheat issue, Mississippi's not a big producer of wheat, and it's only because it hadn't been real profitable. It's grown here in the U.S. In places where they can't grow anything else. Here in Mississippi, we've got such a wide, diverse soil type, we can grow a lot of things. But it's a winter crop, so what I think you'll see next year is you'll see a lot of farmers go to a double crop situation where they'll plant wheat in the wintertime and then in the fall through the winter and then combine it as early as they can and then get a late crop of soybeans in. So I strongly suspect that that'll be something that our farmers look at for next year.
That's what we used to do back on the farm in the old days. And nobody grows. Is anybody growing oats anymore?
There's some oats grown here in the state, mostly for feed sources and for cattle, or there's a lot of deer hunters that use it in their plot rotations. So we've got
it's almost
people
like
doing that.
sorghum. Nobody grows sorghum anymore, so you'll find it every once in a while. Let's talk about Ag Day because it's National Ag Day. So any special events going on?
Sure. I think the National Mall in Washington, D.C. is covered up with farm equipment. Today is Ag Day. It recognizes and celebrates the contribution of agriculture that it makes in the everyday lives of all Americans and encourages Americans to understand where their food and fiber comes from, to value the central role that agriculture plays in your life every day, and to appreciate those that are providing for our safe and abundant food sources here in the United States. I don't think you can underestimate why Russia's going into Ukraine. It's a big agricultural producer there, and I think a lot of this has to do with food. And I think a nation that can feed itself can defend itself, and we can do that here in the United States. I'm very, very proud to be part of my role here promoting our farmers.
Let me ask you this. Any other bills that you're watching before they do sine die that pertains to the Farm Bureau or the farmers in the state?
Well, we don't only just look at agricultural issues. It's a lot of things that affect rural America, rural Mississippi, and we're very interested in getting some more money for the Emergency Road and Bridge Repair Fund. I chair that committee to get a lot of these rural bridges open back up so we can get our agricultural products to market. We're very interested in broadband, and we've been a big encourager of establishing a broadband office here in the state with somebody in charge or appointed to that position, so we can make sure that when we get internet access, that it gets to the last mile down every dirt road and to every barn in the state of Mississippi. So those are two things that we're watching.
It's been an interesting session. Started off interesting. I think it's going to end interesting. And I guess next year, because you get closer and closer to the next election, is not going to slack up any. It's going to be about the same thing.
I think next year will be. I think this coming year and next year will be really interesting on from a political side. And look, Paul, I want to throw out that October 31st is a very special day to us here at Farm Bureau. 100 years ago, October 31st, the Farm Bureau was chartered here in the state of Mississippi, and we've been carrying that legislative burden and being the voice of agriculture ever since. And we've got a lot of exciting things going on this year, and we look forward to let everybody know how important Farm Bureau has been to your life for the last 100 years.
And so much a part of our existence, too, as far as being there in corporate headquarters and part of the Farm Bureau, the people over the years that we've known. Many of them retired and new people coming in, but it's kind of one big family. And that, how many people in that building altogether at one time? I heard it was about 600 at one point.
It's probably down through efficiencies. I think our insurance company has about 300 employees here. We've got about 50 with the Federation, and then there's some others here in the building. We're proud to have the Forestry Association here in the building with us and the Loggers Association. A lot of the people that we work with to get good laws here in Mississippi that help our farmers.
Been kind of a family for a long time. Mike, thank you, sir. Appreciate it always. I appreciate it. Anytime you need us, just give us a call.
Thank you for having me on, Paul. Thank you for all you do.
Mike McCormick, who's president of Mississippi